Our kids want to be online as much as possible, but new research out of the University of Calgary shows 1 in 5 youth have seen unwanted sexual material on the internet. Here to tell us more about this research and to help parents navigate this reality is Assistant Professor of Psychology, Sherry Madigan. Good morning to you, Sherry. Thank you for being here. That's a little unsettling, that statistic.
It is a little unsettling, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and the types of risks that we're worried about is that kids are actually stumbling upon this unwanted sexual content online. And the other big risk on the internet is that kids are being solicited online. So they're being, asked to share sexual material like photos, or they're asked to engage in sort of sexual talk when they're really not wanting to.
Absolutely. Of course they're not wanting to. Yikes.
Yeah.
Okay, now tell us a little bit about this study that you did specifically.
So we actually looked at about 50,000 kids and their online use, and what we found is that 1 in 5 kids are telling us that they're stumbling upon this unwanted sexual material online. So that's like pop-up windows or, seeing things on a website, which is really unfortunate because you can't really control all that. And then 1 in 9 youth are saying that they're actually being solicited online in some way.
Yikes! That's terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that. So what are the consequences then? Like, what happens to these kids when they see that stuff, and are they distressed?
Yeah, well, there's some sort of milder consequences and then some more severe consequences. One of the milder ones is that they can be distressed. So they can find it, kids can stumble upon that and then feel like they're really disturbed by what they saw.
For sure.
Research shows that only about 25% of kids are really feeling extreme distress from that. So that means about 75% of kids are seeing it and not particularly upset by it. And so we'll talk in a second about why that's important to talk to kids. Make sure you talk to them about it. But about some of the more extreme consequences are obviously that when kids meet people online, they'll go and meet them offline. And usually those are strangers.
Yeah.
And there can be more severe consequences like something called sexploitation, where kids start to share images of themselves online, and then those get used as blackmail. So they get sort of coerced into either sending more photos or actually sending money to sort of thwart those images being put online for all to see.
Yikes, blackmail, this is terrible. Goodness.
It is, yeah.
So what do parents really need to keep in mind then when it comes to kids and online safety?
Yeah, so we've got some tips for parents. One is you've got to talk to your kids early and often. So the internet is ever present, and it can be used for actually a lot of good. So it can be a really valuable learning tool. It can be a social connectedness component of everyone's lives. But kids need to sort of be warned about what they can stumble upon, and that means talking to them early and often. And some of the things we say, the things we recommend is to set boundaries around internet use. So when kids are under 8, you should be working on the internet with them. So they should never be looking at it alone. When they're 8 to 13, you need to start talking to them about the risks, and also make sure they're using the internet in a common area. So you can just keep an eye out.
Okay.
And just like you would set boundaries around, crossing the street, you look both ways, or you don't get in cars with strangers. There are internet boundaries, so you don't go, what apps can they use? What websites can they go onto? How, who they can share personal information with. You have to talk about those boundaries.
Okay, and you also say talk about them often. So you talked about it last year. We're going to talk about it again.
Yeah, we're going to keep talking about it because, the internet is changing rapidly. So you want to make sure you're as up to date as possible.
Right.
And you can do something we call what if scenarios. So say to your kids, like, what if you get a stranger tries to talk to you online? What would you do then? What if someone asks you to send a nude photo? What would you do? And so they're a bit more equipped with a problem-solving approach, and in all cases, you want them to come and talk to you about those issues.
Right, yes.
And then you can sort of always say to them, ask yourself, is this illegal, hurtful, harmful in any way? And if the answer is yes, come and talk to me, and let's work through it together.
And let's work through it together.
Yeah.
And then you also say, don't overreact either.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that closes those channels of communication.
It really does,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So what the research shows is that when parents overreact, which is easy to do because
it's unsettling, yeah.
Right, we want to protect our kids. But when we overreact, kids are actually less likely to come back to us. So the goal is really to try and be understanding. So, my kids have come to me and told me things, that they've stumbled upon on the internet, and I've said, thank you for coming to talk to me. Let's work through this together. So it really needs to come from a place of understanding and problem solving to really I think that's what keeps kids safe.
Okay, keep those communication channels open.
Yeah.
Sherry, thank you so much for being here. This is great advice.
Thanks for having me.